Welcome to this week's Ag Report. This week we're going to kind of talk about agriculture, how it has transitioned over time, what we used in the old days. I say we, it's long before my time, but what older generations used and what we use today. So we're going to talk about this corn picker. This is a one-row corn picker. Some might call it a corn snapper on there. It is a Case Model P, and it was built in 1941, 1942, best that I can tell. I am the second owner of it. I'll try and give you a quick, unique story about it. You hear about barn finds and that kind of stuff. So I was looking for a corn picker and found an ad in a newspaper. It said corn picker for sale, and that's about all that it said. So I called it up. A gentleman answered the phone. Could tell he had some age on him by his voice. I said, "Do you have the picker for sale?" He said, "I sure do." He said, "Would you like me to tell you a little about it?" I said, "You bet, let me hear about it." So he was telling me, he says, "Well, I bought this picker new, picked it up at the dealership." But he pointed out, he said, "I didn't order it, I had to pick it up for my friend." And I thought that was, kind of interesting. And I said, "Well, that's good." And I said, "Did something happen with your friend?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said he ordered it, but he couldn't pick it up because he had gone to war. And I said, "Okay." He said, "But I bought it and paid for it when it came in." And so I'm kind of thinking, I wonder what war he's talking about. Talking about the Vietnam War, Korean War, that kind of stuff. And so he hadn't told me an age or anything like that. He said, "Yeah," he said, I went down there in a 1938 Chevrolet pickup and picked it up." And I'm thinking, holy smokes, the guy's talking about World War II. So he picked it up, he came home, he farmed with it. He said that he had put it in a barn, and he says, "I don't need it anymore. I'm in a home now," and he said, "I decided to sell it." And I said, "Well, I would like to buy it. Could I go look at it?" He says, "Yes, sir." He says, "So 30 years ago, I loaned it to a friend of mine, and he has been keeping it for me." He said, "But he died last year, so I'm going to give you his son's phone number." So I hung up the phone, and I'm thinking in my head, there's no way that this piece of equipment still lives after being out of sight, out of mind for 30 years in a barn somewhere. So I called the phone number. I gave the explanation to the son and told who the guy was that I was talking to. And he piped right up. He said, "Yes, sir, I know right where that picker's sitting. It's in the barn. It sure is. You want to come look at it?" So to my surprise, I went and looked at it. It was a true barn find sitting there just like it was. And so here it is today. So a little backstory on the corn picker. Combines were not invented back in those days. So you would pick corn by hand and you would throw it over in a wagon. This would be corn on the cob. Okay, you would still let it dry down because you can't store wet grains. So you would pick it, throw it in a trailer. Well, then they invented the corn picker. That sped things up quite a bit. You would have had this hooked behind the tractor, and there would have been a wagon behind it. So the row would go up in through here. You had an arm. Remember, we're talking about open cab tractors, no cabs or rollover protection or anything. You reach around, you grab this trigger, and this is how you raise and lower that snout up and down. So you had to have kind of some muscles. There weren't gyms back in the day. This is how you got your workout. So it would snap that ear right here. It would go up that little elevator that you see in the back. It would drop down, and I don't know if you can make it out, but there's a little circular pulley right there. That is a blower. So it would blow air across that corn on the cob as it fell down, and that would help blow off any loose shucks that you might have. Then it would fall down in this little hopper and go up that wooden elevator way up there into the back, where that would fall into a trailer that you would store it in. Then you would take it back to your farm. You would kind of rake it off into the back. You'd have an elevator to put it up in a crib. And that's what you did. By that point, you would mainly feed it to probably your animals, your hogs, that kind of stuff. You'd run it through a feed mill, something like that. If you needed some extra cash, you would get another piece of equipment called a sheller. You'd bring it out of that corn crib and you would shell it and have a pile of corn cobs, but then you would have the grain like we use today, and you would take that to town and sell it from there. So So it was a multi-step process. Now in a minute we're going to take you over here and show you the combine. When they invented the combine, well then that made the pickers obsolete. So we're standing here by the combine. Combines are very important to farmers. They can harvest a lot of different things. But like we were talking about the corn picker, this would take the place of that. No longer did you have to pick the corn and then take it home and process it or shell it to get the grain. This would do it all for you. And then you see there's nothing up on the front. You have to have a header on there. Well, that is a 1-row picker. This machine can handle an 8 or a 12-row, even a 16-row unit on the front of there. So you can see the speed and efficiency is multiplied 16 times. Plus, when it comes out of this machine, you have corn ready to sell in the grain. So agriculture, it's always evolving. As you notice, there's lots of pieces of equipment, you know, on a farm or a ranch. It's kind of like when you're cooking in the kitchen. You can't just have a butter knife for everything. You have to have a butter knife and a steak knife and a paring knife. Different things for different activities depending on what you do. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of flashback version here, and we hope to see you again next week. Y'all take care now.